Hello and welcome. It's been a while. We're glad you stuck around. This is the DMZ America Podcast. For those of you who may have forgotten, it's been a couple of weeks. It is Sunday, March 31st. Happy Easter to all of you, and including my good friend, Ted Rall. I'm Scott Stantis. I'll be coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall. I'll come to you from the left. Happy Easter to you as well, Scott, and to everybody else.
Yeah, so RFK kind of got the Easter bunny thing going. How's that for
He laid an egg.
He really did. I think this was just a terrible choice. He picked a running mate, and the running mates that he was talking about previously, one of them was at least a former governor of Minnesota.
Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yes. And of all people, Aaron friggin' Rodgers.
Right, inexplicably. Because what you really need when you have the reputation of being a conspiratorial, wackadoodle anti-vaxxer is a conspiratorial, wackadoodle anti-vaxxer.
With a Super Bowl ring.
Right. Well, you could buy those on eBay.
You can. So who did he pick? He picked Nicole Stranahan, whose one distinguishing feature for higher office seems to be that she divorces well.
She divorces extremely well. By some accounts, she may have, her previous 2 divorces ago, she came into about $1 billion or so. She was married to Sergey Brin, co-founder of some company called Google or something.
Oh, one of those things the kids like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's, I mean, it was weird. She's young, she's 38. And it just seemed like such, I mean, an unserious, is it unserious or unserious? Unserious choice, Ted, to me. It wasn't a serious campaign to begin with, but it had some, and it really lost all traction. I will point this out to our listeners and to my good friend, Ted Rall, that when he really started to lose traction and started to go down the polls is when he did not respond to our request to have him here on the podcast.
That's a good point, actually. Correlation isn't necessarily causation, but it's not necessarily not causation.
So
in all seriousness, I do think it was a symbol, a symptom of a lot of the things that were wrong with that are wrong with that campaign. It's a poorly run campaign. And, I mean, a lot of people who are pointing to his candidacy like to say, like, look, he's doing really well. Well, I mean, he's not really doing well as he was. He was at 19 points in the poll.
Yeah.
And now he's down to 12. That's, he's lost a third of everybody that was interested in him before. You would expect that to happen, but not at this stage. You'd expect it to happen more like when things are tightening up after the conventions this fall. At this stage, I think voters still feel free to consider outside choices from the D's and the R's. And so I really think that he's doing a lot of things wrong, and not, sort of snubbing the podcast is kind of like, all right, well, you do you, but it's like, I think he doesn't understand who he is, what his brand is or should be, and what his place is in the firmament. I mean, I honestly don't give 2 shits that he didn't come on the podcast. It would have been fun, obviously, to have.
Would have been interesting as hell.
We would have been respectful, and we would have had a great conversation, hopefully. But he's in that invitation stands. But the point is that it's not like we're butthurt about it. It's just sort of like, it's one of those things that happened, right? I mean, it's like, but it's kind of like when nobody gets back to you from the campaign, and like, it is a press inquiry. You should be responding to every press inquiry. If I were him, I'd be doing a shit ton of grassroots interviews on stuff, not necessarily our thing, but lots of stuff like our thing. It's like, he doesn't seem to understand, like, you might have that name, but you're a huge outsider at this point. Like, his own family is insulting him and campaigning for Biden. So, I mean, he's been disowned, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, at least politically. So, he definitely should understand that, like, if he has a chance to make a dent into the D's and the R's, it would come from running a really populist grassroots campaign, saying that, like, sort of like a Trump campaign, despite my wealth and privilege, I'm one of you. I will fight for you.
Yeah. No, I think this was a massive mistake. And to your point, to your earlier point, this is the time when he would be gaining in the polls, when people, like you said, feel free to kind of like, yeah, I consider a third party. Here's the problem, Ted. You and I go off on third party tangents all the time, and we're right, by the way, hoping that third, fourth, fifth parties emerge and that there's a true democratic process going on. Now with RFK choosing Shanahan, you've got Dr. West, doing what do you call it? The jazz
The
campaign.
jazz campaign, the freeform jazz campaign.
Okay. So that,
So it might
that's not,
sound cool.
it makes no sense at all. You've got the retread of Jill Stein as the Green Party candidate. The Libertarian are going to meet shortly and pick their candidate. They've got some fairly serious ones. Hopefully they won't, pick the guy who wears the boot on his head.
There's going to be a possible no labels candidate. They say they're going to nominate someone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if the person who's getting nominated knows they're being nominated. Is it just sort of like a surprise, like Ted Rall for president, Scott Stantis for vice president?
It's rough when Chris Christie turns you down.
Did he?
He did.
Oh my God. Yeah. So and Joe Lieberman, I guess that choice is off the table now.
Probably, although frankly, it's going to be hard to tell if any charisma has really been lost. It's
a net charisma. Net zero.
I mean, it's kind of like, well, if your body's moving because it's decaying, I mean, it's still moving.
So, okay. So you and I are in agreement that RFK's choice was ridiculous. I just think here's what's happened. Ted and I are like history wonks, so bear with us for a second, but this has happened before. I believe Davis, who ran with Alton Parker, was nominated by the Democrats because he was a rich dude, and they were hoping rich dudes give money to the campaigns.
Right. And well, she has given $4 million to his campaign.
Yeah, which I guess is a carrying error to her, but this is going to take massive amounts of money. The fact that he turned down the Libertarian, request that he run as a Libertarian, he now has to work.
That was a huge mistake because then he would have had ballot access all taken care of.
All 50 states.
His number one expense and concern. Yeah, that's a huge mistake. I think and the Libertarian Party is not. The thing is, what's interesting about it is not hate. I do not know how, say, libertarians feel about, say, socialists, but socialists do not hate libertarians. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like there's space there. Like, you could run as a libertarian and get some populist support from the left as well.
Well, and his brand is like, the government's lying to you. He's not wrong. The government is trying to deceive you. He's not wrong there in a lot of areas, but his is just this overarching, like every subject is, the government trying to.
Well, the problem is you don't really know what the thing is, you don't really know what he stands for. You don't really know what his main issues are. I mean, it's kind of like, seriously, do we know?
No,
we don't know. And so that's not on us, that's on him. He's got to get that message out. Now, I'm sympathetic to the plight of an independent candidate who's being ridiculed and frozen out by a contemptuous national news media. That's rough. And he said, but still, with social media and the internet, he should be able to get his name out. There's a lot of smart stuff he could do, like have big public events, like in public spaces in big cities all over the country and in small towns.
I wonder the fact that he doesn't.
That guy should be on the road campaigning like a motherfucker, and he's not.
I'm wondering if the fact that he's not is because the Biden administration won't give him Secret Service protection.
Well, I mean, look, don't run for president if you don't want to take that chance. Look, parenthetically, it is absolutely that is disgusting and truly repugnant. Anybody who says that Joe Biden is a decent person could, even if you're like, let's set Gaza aside, fuck him for not giving Secret Service protection to RFK Jr. I mean, I'm not going to vote for RFK Jr. I'll probably vote for Stein, but this is disgusting. I mean, considering the history of his family, two of the most high-profile political assassinations in American history, it is just like, he's got 12% in the polls. He's a real candidate. I mean, give the guy Secret Service protection, and then some. What the fuck is wrong with Joe Biden? I mean, it's just disgusting.
Well, we've addressed that on other podcast. Perhaps you want to listen to him, Ted, because
Well, he's stupid and senile and mean. He's got it all covered.
Yeah, this is mean. This is beyond the pale. So because Ted just came back from vacation, I've got some stuff I got to do. So we're going to make this a slightly shorter podcast. So we're going to tie things up at this segment. Coming up next, your pocketbook.
RFK, very quickly, right? RFK.
Okay.
So is he done? I think he's done for pretty much because because
he could have picked
this is bad positioning. It's like now it's two super rich people running. That's the problem.
Without any government experience. He had an opportunity to bring in a real progressive. I think you and I talked about
a serious person.
Right. And he chose not to do that. So if he doesn't take himself seriously, I'm not going to take it seriously. So
great. I'm with you.
And neither should you. So we'll be back. We'll be talking about things, what are you going to believe? Your pocketbook or your president? It's your patriotic duty to choose one. You're listening to the DMZ America Podcast. I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
We'll be back in a moment. And we're back as promised. Of course, we cost 20% more now than we did when we left for the break. I'm just saying. Just in case you didn't already know, I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right. I'm an editorial cartoonist.
And I'm Ted Rall. I'm some kind of editorial cartoonist as well, but I'm also coming to you, but from another side that's not the right.
The opposite side. Yeah. So, interesting story today in the New York Times. I'm sorry, may have been the Dallas Morning News. I read a lot of news sites, so I get lost. Anyway, they talked about inflation, and they talked about how, why the Democrats are whining and kvetching in the Biden administration. Why are we not getting credit for this great economy? Well, let me tell you that those of us boots on the ground who live in the real world, who don't live exclusively by numbers, and numbers matter, but also does life experience. Janine and I went out to run some errands yesterday. We decided, let's go grab a cup of coffee. I got a medium or grande chai latte. She got a small drink. Guess how much, Ted?
Starbucks?
Yeah.
$11.50.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, you're dead on. It's $12.
I go to Starbucks too. So sometimes, obviously.
But so you do that. Then we were out, and it's chores we were running we went to the grocery store, 2 bags of groceries, $100.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like it was, fancy manicured snail platters or anything. It was just,
right.
Bananas.
It wasn't Whole Foods.
Yeah, it was. So all of that being said, to tell me or someone like me, someone who makes less than me, that inflation is now corralled and you should stop bitching about it is absurd. Now, the numbers are solid. It's about 3.1 to 3.5% inflation rate.
Officially.
But they also tend to subtract some things, particularly grocery and gasoline, which is like, well, those are the things I buy the most of in my life. I generally don't go out and buy boats, yard care equipment, nor heavy duty construction equipment. So my point is this, Ted, that this administration continually says, it reminds me very, very, very much, and I know this will resonate with you as well, George H.W. Bush in 1992, when we went through a shallow recession. We were coming out of it, and he was like, "Say, why are people complaining? We're fine," and they weren't. And then he had that moment with the scanner, which was, just sort of illustrative, or at least for people, and certainly the opposition was trying to paint him as
it was emblematic, although highly unfair.
Yes. But right now we're kind of entering those waters with the Biden administration, who is like dismissing people's concerns about the economy. And they say, what are you talking about? How many of your Democrats friends have said the economy is great? The economy is better than it was. I think if the Federal Reserve Board had actually cut interest rates by a little bit, it would be doing a whole lot better.
That would be good. Yeah.
But, am I just, I'm not saying this because I hate Joe Biden. I don't like him. I see him, through the prism of my politics and so on. But to tell people, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes, which is a line you've used several times in your career. I think we're at that point with this. I mean, if you were part of this administration, how would you be couching the language of the economy?
Well, I mean, I would be, first of all, I wanted to say I'm really glad that you brought up the 1989 to 1992 recession, because that was, it's very analogous to the current situation. The problem there was unemployment and underemployment. The problem now is prices. I say prices instead of inflation because inflation is under control, but inflation is the rate at which prices continue to increase. And what that means is that prices have gone up a lot since Trump was president. And so the rate of that increase has slowed. And that's the problem is not only that's as good as it gets. You certainly don't want to go the other direction and have prices start to drop, because it might sound nice to go back to the way prices were in 2020. But if we did that, it would cause huge problems. Then you end up with a deflationary death spiral like in the early 1930s, and that leads to depression. So we can't have that. The only thing you can do is basically slow the rate of prices increasing. The problem is those high prices are now baked in. And the American people, me included, are not used to those higher prices. I mean, $12 for a couple of cups of fancy coffee still feels insane compared to just a few years ago. And if it merely goes up from 12 to $12.50 next year, that might not be so bad. But the point is that we're still thinking that should be $6. And so that's not going to change. The only thing that solves that is time, as the population gets used to the new level of pricing. No one can do anything about that except just look at the calendar and hope for the best. George H.W. Bush had an analogous problem in that things were getting better by the time the election rolled around. The rate of new layoffs had dropped significantly, and things were they were getting better, but they weren't feeling better yet by 1992. They were about to feel better. And so what could George H.W. Bush have said other than just hold tight? And he kind of did say this: the magic of the marketplace will catch up and it'll be fine by 93 or 94. He would have been right. That is what happened. Herbert Hoover made the same exact argument in 1932, running for re-election unsuccessfully against FDR. Again, I mean, that argument didn't work, was false, because that was a far worse situation. But I mean, I think, Biden's got the same problem. Biden can't really say, don't worry, just hold tight, vote for me for re-election. Everything will be cool by next year or the year after, although that's probably true. I think what he has to do is people want to be seen. They want, you have to say, I totally get it. I know prices are much higher than they were. And sit down and explain what I just explained, and do it with charts, do like a fireside chat kind of thing. Like it might be tempting to do prices negatively. Most Americans don't know that that deflation is really bad, and why it's really bad, and why you have to have a little bit of inflation. Otherwise, the whole economy collapses. You can't have flat prices forever. So,
yeah, but what's I think driving this. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your point.
So I just think that this is where we really get to the problem. This is where we get to the problem of Bidenism, that the president is the explainer in chief, and Joe Biden cannot and does not explain anything to the American people ever. He has not once done like Jimmy Carter with the sweater, explaining to us why we needed to, we needed to have our air conditioners set higher in the summer and our heater and our heat set lower in the winter in order to save energy. He tried to explain that to us. FDR really sat down and kept explaining his presidency all throughout. Biden can't do that. I don't think we've had a good explainer in a long time, but Biden is the absolute worst I've ever seen.
I think Clinton was actually pretty good at explaining things. First of all, he was considerably younger, and
he was smart.
He loved bureaucracy. I mean, he loved the minutia of that stuff. The one area that you didn't touch on, which I think we need to talk about briefly for inflation and for just how prices have gone fucking insane, and that's housing. Um, back when, well, I'm going to sound like
That's
the old
true.
man. Do I get the old man voice, Ted, or should back when I was young, by golly, you could buy a house for a nickel. Um, but seriously, when Ted and I were coming up in our respective professions, housing, the rule of thumb that housing should cost roughly 20% of your uh, of your salary. That is 1 week a month of your salary. That should be what your monthly rent was.
Mhm.
Now it's at 65%. And, I'm looking at rents because, we have a house here and our kids have moved out and it's kind of big for us. So we're looking at selling. And what's funny about that is we couldn't afford anything if we sold our house, which we
Right.
sell it for
Yeah.
quite a gain. But by turns, we couldn't find anything else that was half the size for the price we sold this for.
Yeah,
So
you're stuck.
yeah, kind of. I mean, they're stuck and they're stuck. But in terms of rents, looking at rents, I mean, I know New York is crazy, so I get that. But let's say
But
a two
there's
bedroom.
no rhyme or reason to it. Well, there's reason, but there's no rhyme. I mean, like
Well,
basically the city is falling apart. The population is dropping. It's become a far less interesting place and less necessary place to live. Yet the
yeah,
rents keep going up.
that's
But
weird.
one of the big hidden stories about all this is AI algorithms that landlords across the country are now using, and they literally finesse the rents and figure out how many months they can go vacant between customers. Just they all of their behavior is now algorithmically optimized in order to figure
Yeah,
out how rents can be maximized. Not to mention there's these transnational corporations that are buying up houses all over the country and then turning them into rentals. And it's like these hedge funds. I mean, it's basically stripping away the possibility to buy a house for millions of Americans. It
yeah.
should
My
be.
son, my youngest and his wife live in a neighborhood that they were what all of us would have considered starter homes way back in the day, smaller 2, 3 bedroom, 1,200, 1,100 square
Oh,
feet.
sure.
Um, well, someone decides they literally evicted 7 houses in that neighborhood. And the neighborhood maybe has 35 houses in it. So I'm thinking that's a big percentage. But
Sure.
clearly they felt they could kick the people out, take a sponge and some soap to the place, clean it up a little bit and rent it for twice what they were renting. I don't think they can. But the same is true. Like a 2 bedroom apartment here in Birmingham is not a whole lot cheaper than a 2 bedroom apartment in Chicago was.
Mhm.
I find that shocking.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
is shocking. I mean, look, the rent is too damn high. The Biden and the Democrats have touched upon that for I don't know, like some 2 Tuesdays ago for between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock or something. Just all very, very briefly, they sort of mentioned, we understand this, but I don't know what they could do about it. I mean, you would need to do
yeah,
something on a scale almost as big as like the GI Bill, something that allowed that basically was government subsidies, FHA mortgages, that kind of thing, where you could make mortgages affordable, where people don't have to put down too much as a down payment. Obviously, cutting interest rates would be a huge thing. But I do think Congress could crack down on these, predatory home purchasers. It should be,
yeah.
you could say it's illegal for any entity to own more than X number of homes, for example.
Well, and plus, and you touched on it earlier, the AI rental market or software. There is one company. It's massive. I mean, Ted, it's hilarious how big its campus is in Dallas, where I draw for the Dallas Morning News. And it is, next podcast, I'll have the name, but it literally is the number one software used by landlords across the United States. That's why, coming back to my question, rents a 2 bedroom rental in Alabama is the same as it is in Chicago. I mean, it
it's
makes,
fucking insane.
yeah,
But the point is, I mean, look, here's the thing. Whether you're talking about Biden or any other politician, the person who is most likely to win, who identifies the people's top worries and concerns. B, is able to articulate those concerns in a way that gets people to understand, to feel seen. And C, hopefully, comes up with some credible potential solutions to those problems. And that person will win. I don't.
But you have to see it. You have to say, I see it. I
Right.
recognize it.
Generally speaking, this has been the advantage of Donald J. Trump. He has, in several cycles, particularly the first time in 2016, been able to convince people that they felt seen by him. And it must suck to live in these Rust Belt towns with all these boarded up houses and closed and rusted old factories. That's terrible. We used to be a great country. Now we're not. We have open borders. All these people are pouring in. What the hell is going on? That doesn't feel like America. That stuff, it does make people feel seen. I don't think he had any solutions to those problems.
No, none. No.
But it was a step ahead of the Democrats, who
Yeah.
who didn't even make people feel seen. Maybe if the Democrats can at least make people feel seen, it may be enough to get them over the hump this year. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either on that one. I just don't know if it's where we are in the arc of the campaign.
Sorry, George. I don't think Joseph Robinette Biden, the Jr., can possibly make people feel seen. I don't think he does that. I think the entire pitch has been and remains, I'm not Donald Trump, and I don't think that's very exciting.
No, in fact, you saw their big fundraiser in New York. Well, maybe you didn't because you were out of the country, but they had a big old fundraiser, raised $25 million. Biden was there, or at least he thought he was. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton.
And Lizzo. And Stephen Colbert. Sorry.
Okay.
Just saying.
Anyway, so the whole spiel was, Trump bad. It's not a spiel I disagree with, but it's just like, now tell me what you're going to do. The thing that the Republicans is, they can't tell you what they're going to do. You have no clue.
Yeah, but they don't need to, because because MAGAism and Trumpism is sort of a fascism light, and in fascism, developing ideology and policy is not only unnecessary, it's actually detrimental to your cause, because it's a cult of the leader and the personality.
Right.
And if you get people focused on policies, no matter how great those policies are, then you cause like dissent, because not everybody will agree with the policy.
Right.
So that's why, so they don't need that, but Democrats need that. Democrats, Joe Biden, and for that matter, Kamala Harris, are never going to lead a cult of personality. Sorry. I mean, they don't even have their own personalities. So really, truly, it has to be about policy and vision. The Democratic pitch has to be about continuity and competence. Like, leave us in charge. The ship is in good hands. We'll steer it. Between the shoals, and we will get you there in the future better off than you are today. That's the Democratic pitch. It has to be. And they're not right now. They're far from achieving that.
Real quick, on a side note, which is really weird. I was listening to Kamala Harris, they're pushing her out there more and more. So listening to her more and more. Where do you know where she's from originally? It doesn't, who she sounded like the other day? Hillary. I mean, exactly. I mean, I thought I was just playing something in the background. I went, holy shit, is that Hillary? No, goodness, no.
Huh. I don't know.
I'm trying to think, because I know obviously she was elected held elected office in California. She was a senator, U.S. senator from the state of California. So, I mean, I get that.
Yeah, that's right. She's from Oakland. So she is from Northern Cal. She's from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, well, being a Southern Californian, that's what annoyed the.
She's from the rich parts of Oakland. So Oakland's very big for people who haven't been there. And people always think of like the sort of poorer, Black areas, which are definitely a big part of Oakland. But up in the hills, there's some very, very wealthy areas, and she's from there.
Okay. All right. Now I know. Just about Northern California, which is in California. As someone who was born in San Diego and lived many years there, and in Los Angeles, San Francisco, not California. On that note, we're going to be back. We'll take a short break and we're going to be back and we're going to talk about all sorts of things like New World Orders and sperm counts.
Okay,
Stay tuned.
please.
And we're back to the DMZ America podcast, the final segment. I am Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the left.
So, a couple of things. The New World Order seems to be shaping up, and I wonder if it's minus the United States. And my way of thinking is because it isn't minus the United States because our sperm counts are way, way down. Way down. Down.
Yeah. Well, there's long been articles about this. Basically, the main explanation given for lower fertility among men has been that environmental causes, right? I mean, we're surrounded by pollutants, our water is dirty, our food is
radiation.
disgusting. Also, some of us who will go unnamed, Ted Rall, wear very tight, skinny jeans, and that also affects things. Yeah. So there's lots.
I have Basque thighs, so I've never been.
This is also a fascinating thing, Scott. There's a theory that we've been selecting as a race against testosterone and against more sort of masculine, aggressive guys. So the way we do that is our most aggressive men tend to commit more crimes. So we put them in prisons and we kill them and we execute them. So in those two places, they don't get to marry and reproduce. And so human males, and I guess females also are becoming less hairy, less aggressive, more docile, and less testosterone. And that's why guys are suffering from low testosterone. And
God, have you talked to a millennial about this, or a Gen Z, or whatever the hell they're calling themselves these days? God, I mean, it's just anyway. So this article, I know, but I'm just the younger, the 20s, the kids, and the youngins. Anyway,
the children.
Let me read real quick from Metro. It says, "You've heard of the gut microbes and probably skin microbiome, but did you know there's also a semen microbiome, and that it could affect fertility?" That is the finding of a recent study by the Department of Urology at the University of California, Los Angeles, otherwise known as UCLA. Microbiome refers to the collection of microbes, bacteria, fungi, and viruses that affect human health. While there have been many studies into the microbiomes found in digestive systems,
not biomes.
Microbiomes. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, biomes. Skin, there have been less focused on the reproductive systems, particularly in men. However, UCLA team found that one microbe in particular, the bacteria Lactobacillus inners can have a direct negative effect on sperm motility, which in turn affects fertility, which makes some sense. Apparently, this is women have maybe the same bacteria that causes vaginosis, and so there you go, Ted. We're doomed as a species. So listen, all of our podcasts, all of our hope for democratic reforms and for the betterment of humanity is for naught because the bacteria is going to make sure that we can't reproduce.
True. And so the thing is, there's a lot of, I guess you could say it doesn't really matter because Americans don't seem to really want to reproduce. This is a shocking statistic, right? But in 1960, the average number of births per woman in the United States was well over 3.5. Okay. So by 1970, it had plunged to 2.25. And today we are down to 1 2/3. So 1.66. So in other words, we are having half as many children, less than half as many children as we did back then. More to the point though, to replace the existing population with the people you have here, you'd have to have about 2.2, 2.3 births per woman, right? Because you're replacing each, woman obviously reproduces with a dude. And so that's how that works, right? And then some people die in car accidents or commit suicide or get sick or whatever. So Um, so the point is that we are losing population fast. If we weren't, this is part of, like, I think this is my theory for why the elites are leaving the border open. This is why Biden has thrown open the border to migrants. I mean, here in New York City, the population of the city is dropping very by a small amount. Like, it's a city of 8 million people. It's dropping like 80 to 100,000 per year for the last 3 years. That's pretty remarkable, but it's really remarkable when you consider the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of foreign migrants coming into New York City every year now. So that means that figure includes those. So that means that, like, they are replacing like 200,000-300,000 New Yorkers who were here previously and are leaving New York City. So basically, it's why they're leaving the border open. It's interesting that they don't want to explain it. It's got to be why. But I mean, I guess the question is, is it a problem that sperm counts are dropping? I mean, I guess it is, in that, like, people are already getting married later, and it's hard for them to. So a lot of them increasingly are going to have to rely on IVF in order to have kids, and it's going to be harder and harder to do IVF, at least using sperm from your husband or your male partner, if their sperm count is dropping. So, I mean, I would say it's a canary in the coal mine. It tells you that our environment's fucked up. I mean, I kind of was thinking about that on vacation. I was in Belize in Central America, and without belaboring the point, I've been there a few times before. And this is a country where they assiduously protect their wildlife. Their entire economy is based on ecotourism. And man, there's so few fish. There's so few birds left. There's so few animals left. It is just like, there's animals, there's still stuff, but it's nothing. The die-off is huge. I mean, here in New York, I mean, you just don't see birds the way you did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, you don't see bugs. Think about when it rained, there'd be like, the sidewalk was lousy with worms being washed up onto the sidewalk, right? Not anymore. There's no worms anymore. I mean, everything's we've killed off our planet.
Well, so speaking of the New World Order, then, do we want to be a part of it? I agree with you, by the way. I've posted several times on Centerclip about immigration and the growth of the American economy. I think you're right. It's the only way to keep the economy growing. They don't do that in Japan, and the average age in Japan, I believe, currently is 67 years old. Obviously, that's going to get over 70.
The average age of a Japanese person is 67. By the way, their fertility rate is 1.3.
Yeah, I mean, and
it's been low for a long time.
Yeah, but what's happened there too is that the women are becoming liberated, and they're going into the workforce, and they don't want to be stay-at-home moms.
Average age of a Japanese person is 49. That is old, though.
No, it was
49. Well, come on, it's not possible. You'd have to have tons of people who are like 120.
Well, it's Japan; they have that.
Not really.
They live a healthy lifestyle. Okay. Well, okay. So it's it was lower than
child pornography, I guess. Okay,
but that's that. All right.
Yeah. The median age of that's crazy. The median age of a Japanese citizen in 1955, median age was 22.8.
Yeah, and which is what society
49.5.
Which is what it should have been, which is what it should be now, frankly. It should be
after the war too. So many people were killed, right?
Well, there's that, but also after wars, people tend to make a whole lot of babies, and that's what happened here. Obviously, I'm a baby boomer, hence the name. So going forward, I mean, so the environment is, I mean, clearly the planet's now getting back at us. You're going to screw me up? No, I'm just going to wipe you off, and then we're going to start again with the cockroaches. Real quick, I did want to have your take on the New World Order as it's emerging now for the 21st century. Obviously, the 21st century is already 20 plus years old, but well, I mean, do you see America? I mean, for the first time since they've been doing the happy list, you've seen this, the happiest countries on the planet.
Yeah.
It's always like fucking Finland or something. Which there's a Finnish comedian who performs in the United States. He's very, very funny. He says the people who were most surprised by this were the Finnish. He
Yeah,
goes,
it's funny because when they watch their movies and stuff, they seem like kind of dour.
they're dour, but they're very level.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, maybe that's it. But for the first time, Ted, since they've been making the list, the United States was not on in the top 10.
Yeah, and it's dropping fast.
Well, you happy?
Especially young people are really fucking miserable, like Zoomers and millennials.
Well, for the first time, again, since they've been polling this kind of question, Americans do not feel that the next generation will have it better than the current population.
Yeah, well, that's
That's huge.
That is correct too.
Yeah, I think there's going to be technological things that they have that we didn't have. There's going to be medical advances that they will have that that we didn't have. But
they
I
mean
think,
like quality of life overall.
yeah, quality of life is not when you can't afford a fucking house.
Right.
I totally get that.
You're at a point now where people don't even know if they can afford they're going to be able to afford a car when we transition to electric. And like, it's like, oh, really? Do I have to pay $50,000 for a car? For like a
we're not going to transition to totally electric cars just because you want to hear something weird about that. Electric cars and why they've sold more than they ever had before, but still only 7% of car sales. I think it's somewhere in that neighborhood of total of they are EV electric vehicles, not the hybrids. I own a hybrid, which I love, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, hybrids are great.
Strongly recommend it. It's because they have the limit on how far you can drive, which I think is hilarious because like, I forget what the study was. It comes back to our first segment, which is perception versus the numbers. The perception is, oh shit, I can only drive 300 miles. Well, what if I want to drive further? 90+% of Americans never drive more than like 45 miles a week. It's
Sure.
like, this is not really going to be an issue unless you're a long haul trucker, not an issue for you. But it's the perception that, listen, we have family in New Orleans. We live in Birmingham. That's about a 5.5-hour drive, and it's a little over 300 miles. And, that's one of the reasons we won't get an electric car, because by the way, if I go there and I can get within 50 miles of where I'm going, I still have to park it and charge it. They don't charge quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I get the psychology of it, but it's just, like I said, perception and reality are
I think like right now, an electric car for a couple is a good second car.
Yes, that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, you have it like it's for tooling around town. But for for the road trip, driving up to the Trans-Labrador Highway, it's not for that.
Yeah.
But also there's aspects to this that I'm very curious how they're going to resolve. Like, for example, here in New York City, there are no charging stations, like at all.
Really? You're kidding.
Where the fuck would you put them? Where? There's hardly even gas stations anymore. I mean, they've gotten rid of most of them. So, like, where do you go? I mean, it's like literally, believe me, as a car owner in Manhattan, it's challenging. When I want to get my oil changed, I mostly like go somewhere, and then like while I'm out of town, I'll take some extra time to have my.
Oh, I thought you just found like the back bay or something and just.
No, I mean I do have my angles. I mean, basically, I go to Spanish Harlem if the guy can take me and stuff. But I mean, it's gotten really ridiculous. In the 80s, when I first moved here, no problem. There were gas stations all over New York. But the point is, 8 million people. Like, you think about like, well, we don't have the kinds of public municipal parking lots that you might have in a city like, say, Cincinnati, where they could put the charging stations like in a giant row on one floor of a municipal parking lot, and that would work. They don't have that here. We drive up to a tiny little garage. The dude takes your car and he brings it way up somewhere. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And
interesting.
So, yeah, and there's no street charging stations at all. I mean, there might be 5.
I'm just thinking of the politics of New York City. And that's why I seem so stunned that there are no charging stations. You think there would be a million.
Well, you would also think that New York City would have like really great like radios, alternative radio stations. It does not. There's all sorts of things that there's no good Mexican food in this city.
What?
No, that's true. I mean, like, you basically all the Mexican American chefs are working in other people's restaurants. They're like not all, they
Well,
haven't opened their own.
I'm coming out to see it in a couple of weeks. So we're not, so Mexican's not going to be on the menu.
Mexican's kind of off the table. Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
son of a bitch. All right. Well, hey, listen, we're told we're doing it in a tight hour. We're doing it in a tight hour. Ted, where
Yeah.
can we see all things Tedian? And
You,
welcome home, by the way. Missed you.
thank you. It's good to be home. So you can go to rall.com, RALL, whoabai.org. You can check out the gocomics.com/Ted Rall, and the Final Countdown radio show with me and Angie Wong, and sometimes with you. That's Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon on X Spaces and Rumble. You can stream it later if you don't feel like listening live. I would recommend just doing it that way. Then you don't feel bound. Live doesn't matter. We're not taking calls or anything, so it doesn't matter. So anyway, yeah, that's it. How about you, Scott? Where can people find all Stantisian things?
It's fun to be on the final countdown of your producer call. Text contacted me Friday morning and said, "Can you be on tomorrow?" This morning, I said, "Well, I'm going to mass." And did they tell you that you should go to mass too?
No, they did not.
Oh, see, I asked them to tell them that this is what Ted should be doing as well. Ted did not, but okay. So yes, I can be.
Although, by the way, I got to tell you, in Belize, man, Easter weekend is a big fucking thing. Most restaurants were closed for Good Friday.
Oh, wow, they're closed.
Everybody's wishing everybody happy Easter, and they had a national bike race, the Holy Saturday national bike race that goes 140 grueling miles through the searing tropical heat of Belize.
Are they being chased by people in Roman costumes, like trying to crucify them, or how's this work?
No, but it was like the Holy Saturday bike race, which the origins of which are esoteric and bizarre. Apparently, it was an effort to to encourage people 60 years ago to go bicycle to watch cricket matches. This is actually a true thing.
Jesus. Okay. Well, that sounds more British than it needs to be. You can see my work at gocomics.com/Scott Stantis. See my comic strip Prickly City at gocomics.com. And you can also see my work at the Chicago Tribune. Go to chicagotribune.com. You can go to Dallas News, which is the site for the Dallas Morning News, and see the gallery of work I do for them. And Ted and I are both on Centerclip, which is like a really cool app where you get mini podcast, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes, which I really enjoy. I mean, I just think there's some stupid news story. I really don't have any place else. I'm not going to draw about it. Probably not going to bring it up on the podcast here, but for 3 minutes, I can talk about bullshit or stuff that I kind of sort of know about. And I can throw out, hey, here's the historic context for this.
Yeah.
So you can find that, go to centerclip.com, or we're now just partnered with Newsweek and with Money Clip. So the podcast there. So it's all good, man. It's all good. Welcome home.
It's good to be home.
Is it? Yeah, it is good. It is, isn't it? It's good to get your own bed.
I mean, look, I won't lie. It's paradise down there, but it's beautiful. There's just nothing like swimming in the ocean. That's like something everyone's supposed to do. Swimming in the ocean is just like if you can't swim, just fuck around in the ocean. It's so nice. It's good for you. It's a different way of life, but I got to say, I don't know how people who live in really hot climates focus for any kind of sustained period of time, because I feel like my brain is baking the entire time I'm there, and all I can do is like, I'm good for basically an hour and a half of concentration a day, and then pretty much after that it's like me want to go swimming at beach, and that's about it.
When I lived in Arizona, in the summers they just last way longer than they ought to, and so, but we had a swimming pool, so like you'd stay indoors. We had these weird shades which make the house look like a fortress, literally, like they were thick and you could close them all the way so no light was coming in, and it kept the house cool, but you didn't get to do what human beings do best, which is frolic in the sunshine. Except for, you go outside for 3 minutes, you go, I'm going to the pool now. I am going to pool now. And but it still sounds like paradise. I want to see some more of your pictures. So anyway, bienvenido, Señor Rall. Adios, muchachos. Until next time, huevos rancheros.
Enjoy. Happy Easter.